What's up, everyone? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today we're going to be diving into some deeper topics here. Frankly, obviously, we're going to be talking about what happened over the weekend for the July 4th weekend. Frankly, this is a consistent topic, it seems like, on this podcast and on probably any other show that we have had. Any political show, I should say, over the last 2 months, 3 months, just because of the amount of mass shootings and all of that happening. But it's important to cover that, but also transition into talking about some of the bigger narratives, the bigger talking points around these issues, specifically with it being July 4th, this past Monday. I want to dive into a little bit of the patriotism argument, the patriotism versus nationalism argument. What makes someone a patriot? What makes somebody not a patriot? And, those lines that we draw in the sand. And then I really actually want to look at the culture war and how this all connects together. So this is kind of like an all-encompassing episode around this culture war issues, but they're not all the same. A lot of the problem with what we've been doing since the beginning of the show is that the same topics have kind of been newsworthy over and over again, whether it be, the LGBTQ plus community being attacked by Republicans, which has consistently happened since the rebooting of this show, or, gun violence, which has also been literally, I think, over 350 mass shootings just this year alone. So as much as we want to talk about other issues, we want to bring on other guests and whatnot, and we will. These things keep coming up, and it's important that we keep, on the message and talking about what we can do, how we can respond to it, and the greater picture. So that's kind of what today's all-encompassing episode is. And you might notice that I'm not responding to chat if you're in the chat, because this is a pre-recorded episode that I am doing because I'm going on vacation today. So I will be back next week, and the plan is that next week, if you are excited for a big guest, next week we are slated to have Malcolm Kenyatta, State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who just ran for Senate. He is scheduled for next week live. So if you are somebody that is a fan of Malcolm's, he will be on for 30 minutes next week. And please send some questions on over if you would like me to ask them. But without further ado, we're going to get into some of the prescient issues of what we're talking about today. And frankly, these are going to be disturbing. Some of these videos are going to be disturbing. Some of these clips are going to be traumatic. So warning ahead of time that if you haven't seen these videos, if you don't want to see these videos, maybe skip ahead a little bit. But I think it's worthwhile. And let's also contextualize some of this stuff too, because the reason why we want to show these videos is not to be shock, right? It's not for shock value. The reason why we have to show videos of people running from, a mass shooter, or the people thinking that there's a mass shooter, is twofold, really. But one, it shows that it's real. It shows that it's happening. But two, it fills in the coloring of this is the impact. This is the fear and the societal impact that we have collectively, that not only at fireworks do people have to be afraid of a mass shooting, but literally in a parade, which I've marched in a parade, and I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think, somebody could run a car through here, or commit a mass shooting while I'm walking through here, or all these kids, right? And that's what happened this weekend. That is what happened this weekend. So the same way, and it's not the same thing, so don't mistake what I'm saying here, but the same way that it used to be important to show footage of war, to actually show the American people, this is what happens when you go to war, is the same reason why we should be showing these types of videos, discussing them, diving into it, because the impact is tangible. The feeling is real. You can see the fear. And if you're just listening, there's going to be some without audio, but there's going to be some with audio, so you can hear it. It's important. And I'll point out again for maybe any of you that haven't seen any of my prior discussions around these types of issues is in the early 2000s, under the Bush administration, they didn't let cable media show the caskets of military members that passed away. And I say passed away, I mean that were killed in war. I'm trying to be respectful, but that's the factual nature of this. And the reason why it's important to show, we don't have to show the graphic bodies and all that stuff, but the caskets is that it's showing the tangible effect of what war causes, of what mass shootings cause. And since then, people have felt a complete disconnect from the effects of war. And now maybe in Ukraine, you see a little bit more of the videos now. You see live streams. You saw in, I believe, 2015 or 2016, that little boy that was on this cover of Time magazine in Syria that was just covered in dust because his whole village was just blown up by a bomb. And these are the types of images that, although graphic, although enraging, although saddening, are necessary to provide what is actually happening and what actually happens when you use a weapon like a bomb or a AR-15 or whatever it is in one of these shootings. So we're going to take a look, and I don't think this first one has any sound, but it's a little bit blurry, but so for those that can't, there's no sound to it, but for those who can't see, this is in Philadelphia. This is this past weekend where during the fireworks celebration, there was a shooting, and the guy didn't kill anybody, luckily, but they shot 2 police officers, which again is important that we have to note that when these people are engaging in this type of thing. So here we have, but when we have people engaging in these types of rhetoric, right, the police are also getting targeted. And people want to say it's one or the other. It's not one or the other. If the police are getting targeted in these things, right, we should absolutely be fighting to make change so that this doesn't happen for the police officers, so that it doesn't have to keep on occurring, that it doesn't have to continuously happen to civilians, to police officers, that the police officers don't have to respond to heavily armed people every time there's a public event. I want the cops' jobs to be easier. I want it to make it so that police are safe. I want it to make it so that the police have an easier job making sure that we are safe. And the way that you do it is removing some of these guns that are just used for crime, that are used for mass shootings, and making it so that we can prioritize the safety of people, not the so-called theoretical right to bear arms, which all of the lines are arbitrary on. All of the restrictions are arbitrary on. But if you functionally believe that anyone should have a gun and just be able to walk around, then we don't live in the same society. We don't understand each other. We really realistically don't live in the same reality. So here's another video. I'm gonna mute myself while this one happens. Well, actually, I'll mute the video and I'll just narrate it, just so for anyone that's not watching. But we have in the Highland parade here. See it here. In the Highland parade that happened in Illinois, where the mass shooting happened, and I think 7 people died. This is just graphic footage of people running away and screaming. And this first one is a kid saying, "Oh, I can't believe I got that on video," because literally there's a mass shooting happening while he's running away, and there's people in the parade. Now we have a girl with like, it must be behind them. I think there's like some sort of group with a banner, and they're all grouped up in the banners, like any parade. And then you can just start seeing people start to look around. They hear the shots, and then they run away to the side. And this is the continue, like every one of these videos. Here's a shot of the street, where people are just running. I think it's like probably a father or a grandfather picking up their kids, trying to get them to go and run. Somebody's recording from above. There's a police on the bikes, or at least event guards, not necessarily police. And all of this is in response, to one guy with a gun. So if we want to continue to have these things happen, then yeah, don't restrict access to guns. If you want to end these things, you want to provide some level of support for people, then stop letting people get guns so easily. This guy in Illinois got the guns legally with the help of his father. And we have to start looking at closing these loopholes, closing these ways that it's so easy to get a gun. And just while we're talking about a lack of leadership, because it's in the same article here that I have, let's see what the mayor of Philadelphia has to say, which might piss some people off. Which I think I might have an advertisement here, so I will filibuster for 15 seconds. But functionally, it takes real leadership from the Democratic Party, because the Republican Party is not going to do anything. The package that was passed, that was is being passed, has done nothing, and it will do nothing, because it is a milquetoast centrist, boiled down to the bottom of the barrel thing that they can get passed. They passed that gun reform just to say that they passed something. This is not enough. This will never be enough to just have one little thing, two little things. It has to be comprehensive gun reform. The same way that if we talk about immigration and you just want to say, oh, it's just build a wall. No, that's stupid. If you have to have a debate and it comes down to one-liner, it's probably not the real solution, right? Unless there's like, here's the tagline and then here's all the other things that come with that, right? But common sense gun reform, that is the tagline. And then that comes with all of these other things. Universal background checks, closing the gun show loopholes, making sure that you can't be a domestic abuser and get a gun. There are simple things like that. And then there's plenty of more. Magazine restrictions, it's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Literally banning assault weapons, which I know, there's no definition of assault weapons, but we can make one, because guess what? We choose to create our language and how we define things in our society. So yes, there are ways. We used to have an assault weapons ban, so maybe we could just reinstall that one. How about that? And I know I'm getting like amped up because this stuff is annoying. It is frustrating. It is infuriating that this keeps happening. And then we get people like this, the mayor of Philadelphia, that has nothing to say, nothing positive to build onto, nothing to lead in the affirmative moving forward. And let me unmute this. He's unmuted now, and I'm going to mute myself, and I'll let him speak for himself.
It was a laid-back, chill day. Weather was beautiful. Concert was beautiful, but we live in America, and we have the Second Amendment, and we have the Supreme Court of the United States telling everybody they can carry a gun wherever they want. It's like Dodge City. I mean, so like we have to come to grips with what this country is about right now. We had a beautiful day out there today, except for some nitwit either shooting from a window or shooting from somewhere who has a gun. It probably shouldn't have had it, and I was in Canada 2 weeks ago, never thought about a gun. The only people I knew had guns up in Canada were police officers. And that's the way it should be here. But, I mean, look, in my lifetime, that's never going to happen. So, a lot of goofballs out there with guns, and they can get them anytime they want. So, this is what we have to live with.
What's the mayor doing about this?
If I had the ability to take care of guns, I would. But the legislature won't let us. The U.S. Congress won't let us. The governor does the best he can. Our attorney general does the best he can. But this is a gun country. It's crazy. We're the most armed country in world history, and we're one of the least safest.
Yes.
I'm concerned every single day. There's not an event or a day where I don't lay on my back at night, look at the ceiling, and worry about stuff. So everything we have in the city over the last 7 years, I worry about. I don't enjoy 4th of July. I don't enjoy the Democratic National Convention. I didn't enjoy the NFL draft. I'm waiting for something bad to happen all the time. So I'll be happy when I'm not here, when I'm not mayor, and I can enjoy something.
Thank you.
The loss of life and these
When you're a small business, efficiency matters. That's why I work out, trim my bonsai tree, and tailor my trousers.
Some reason this is not closing, but pardon me. So you heard it there. He said the loud part. He said the quiet part out loud. I can't wait to not be the mayor. And look, I think leading up to that part is all true. What he's saying is they're hamstrung. They are hamstrung by the federal Congress. They are hamstrung by the state legislature, which preemptively passes bills that stop. Which let's take that into consideration, right? Right here in Doylestown, in the borough, we had people that tried. We had the borough council that wanted to pass a single-use plastics ban, right? This is totally different from the guns issue, and let's just divorce it from that, just so we have an example. The single-use plastics ban would have gone into effect had the preemptive bill that got passed in the state legislature not gone into effect. Functionally, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, places like Doylestown that are more progressive in the boroughs, we're passing these things, but the state legislature preemptively passes a bill that bars the municipalities from implementing these things. So the same thing happens with guns. The same thing happens with every issue across the board. They don't want people to take action. They don't want people to move the needle in any way, but to just like give up and throw your hands up, and I get it, it's frustrating, but this is the time for leadership, and this is the time to call on the president, call on the Congress, call on all these different, like, this all boils down to the last couple of, he said it in his response there too. It boils down to the fact that in 2008, in the Heller case, that the Supreme Court allows every single person, functionally, to have the right to carry a firearm. And if that's the interpretation of the Constitution, which I don't agree with, that is not the act. Like, if we can just throw out the precedent for Roe versus Wade, let's be honest here. There is no real precedent that says that, except in 2008 with the Heller case that says you can have an unfettered right to a firearm no matter what, regardless. So that precedent is a lot newer than the fact that Roe versus Wade in 1972 or whatever it is, 1972. So the 50 years for that. So don't give me that crap. It's not the same thing. The continued ignoring of functional language that says well-regulated militia. Even if you took militia out, well-regulated. Come on. But if the Mayor Kinney wants to not be the mayor anymore, he should resign. He should let somebody run instead. And somebody that's going to put forth the message and at least continuously try to push the needle. Because that's all you can do as a mayor. In many cases, you just work with the police. And that's kind of the way that Pennsylvania is. So it's not the same way as some other states, so just so you know. But it's still important to bring up what he said here. But with that, we kind of can move into the patriotism versus the nationalism, because that patriotism front that we talk about is important, because I consider myself a patriot. Many of you probably watching this consider yourself a patriot, and historically the progressive era of this country was the most successful time of this country's history, and I'm very proud of the achievements of the country in moving forward in economic justice, racial justice, gender equality over the last 100 or so years. But we are seeing an unprecedented clawback of civil rights and civil liberties right now as we continue to have the Supreme Court rule our lives, as we continue to have a minoritarian Republican Party control our lives through the use of institutional decay. I consider myself a patriot in that way that I can criticize the government, or I can criticize the country and the actions that we take, because I believe that we can do better. I believe that we can be as great as the founding fathers thought that we could be. And I believe that we can continue to utilize the founding documents to implement a new progressive era that could possibly provide more civil rights, more civil liberties, and more economic justice for everybody in this country, rather than strip it away to give away to this religious fundamentalism that is taking hold in the institutions of our country. So, patriotism is being proud of your country, loving your country, but being able to criticize it and do it constructively. I draw attention to this because the patriotism that a lot of people think of is this willingness to ignore all the bad, wrap yourself in the flag, love the American, American way of life, no matter what, unless you disagree with the progression of time where we've given more rights to gay people, or, the right to vote to women, or, civil rights to black and brown people in this country, in the 1960s, the civil rights era. All this stuff is good, but if you criticize any of that stuff today from the right, they could still consider themselves patriots, even though there's no constructive criticism to be had. So it's all in comparison to a reactionary right wing that considers themselves patriots. Frankly, a lot of people on the left allow them to have that framing, patriot, because they are unwilling to criticize the United States in a broad narrative, in a way that is actually constructive. But I want to point out that the fact is that people that consider themselves patriots, right? The people that you see wrapping themselves in, dressing like Uncle Sam and all this stuff, they're the same people that will consistently criticize, undermine, and hate on the president. I have an example of a guy that I used to, at my old gym, that he would wear a Let's Go Brandon shirt, which, of course, if you don't know, is not really saying let's go Joe Biden. It's saying fuck you, Joe Biden, which first of all, at least say that if that's what you want to say. But secondly, it undermines the narrative of like, oh, you can't criticize the president. That's the president of the United States. You can't do that. Which is the logic that people used to say, by the way, under Bush, under Trump, under Reagan, all these people, even under Clinton and Obama, both, all of it. But it started really poorly from the right, especially under the Obama administration, where the right wing would attack him for the stupidest little things, and because they would consider it unpatriotic, un-American. But what they're really saying is they don't like the way that America is progressing. They don't like the current day America, and they don't want us to continue to expand. They don't want us to continue to have success. They don't want us to continue to grow our rights. And it's the same stupid logic that's the people that will say, well, actually, you don't have a right to vote. Or anything that's not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution. But the right to vote especially is one that's pungent almost. Or that it's the same people that say like, well, it's not a democracy, it's a republic. It's like, yeah, we know. we're not talking about the minutia of these distinctions, but these people hate and hate and hate on Democrats more than anything. But they'll never consider themselves anti-American, even if the American people support the Democrats more than the Republicans, because guess what? More Democrats live in this country than Republicans. More left-wing people live in this country than conservative people. But because of the way that the institutions are set up, the Republicans are given more institutional power. So it seems like a 50-50 split, but it is absolutely not a 50-50 split. You can tell that, just look at the way that corporate America is moving. Look at the way that capitalism has evolved to be inclusive for gender equality, for racial equality, for LGBTQ plus issues, because that is where the money is, because that's where the majority of the people are, and that's what they support. So it's silly to just say and criticize all these things, right? All this boils down to is that the criticism from a left-wing perspective has always been labeled un-American and unpatriotic, but the criticism from the right wing has always just been, oh, that's just the way things are, and that's Uncle Jimmy or whatever, and he's just okay to criticize the president and complain about, I don't even want to say what these people probably actually say, but you know what I'm talking about. You do know what I'm talking about. If you have somebody that's complaining about all these people, like it's consistent throughout my whole life. The people that have complained the most are the right wing, and they hate on America more than anybody else. So yeah, there's probably some people on the far left that burn American flags. And guess what? Just because you wrap yourself in the American flag does not make you a patriot. It makes you a nationalist. And that is the distinction that I'm trying to draw here. I wouldn't burn an American flag. I love America, but I also think that we have to grow. We have to progress. We have to fight for more justice, for more rights, for more freedom. Because we're not done. The second that we are considered done is when the empire of the American ideal will fall. And I don't mean the empire abroad. I mean the empire of the idealized version of America. Because I don't care about the imperialist, the imperialism of the country. I don't care. Not in the, I don't care that we're doing bad things, because I do care about that. But I'm saying, I don't care that we are an empire, but I care that the ideals of the democracy that was founded in this country live on and can hopefully inspire other countries to do the same. But we are now going backwards. We are regressing, which makes people feel less patriotic. And then you have people from both sides that are feeling less and less patriotic, which leads me to this new poll from Gallup that has been discussed. I've seen it discussed on the news over the last couple of weeks, specifically on Fox News first, but then I saw it on CNN this morning. So I was like, why don't I talk about it? So this top line here is extremely proud and very proud combined. So during 2022, 65% of people in America said that they're extremely or very proud of the country, but only 38% of people said that they're extremely proud, which is the lowest since 2001 when they first started to poll this. Now, of course, you see these giant bumps here because of, frankly, let's be honest here, the response to 9/11 is going to skew these numbers in the first couple of years, as it frankly probably should have. But that leads to frankly, the way that I interpret this is that since the 80s, we've seen a growing nationalism. Now, I don't know this for a fact. This is a theory, so take it for what it is. But under neoliberal governments, and neoliberalism meaning like the post-New Deal, Carter, Reagan, Clinton, all that stuff, right? Neoliberalism being the privatization and corporatization of most of America. has led to a growing nationalism. Which, sorry, I'm about to sneeze. If you if you were just listening, why did he do that? My house is very dusty. But the neoliberalism in these years, which I know gets that framing gets thrown around a lot, right? But that is the actual interpretation of what I'm having here is that era has led to a rise in nationalism, not patriotism, right? And nationalism can be useful, but for the most part is not useful because you have an undermining of the critiques, an undermining of the let's just take it from a musician, right? If you have a musician and they write song after song after song, and it's the same song over and over and over again, and they never listen to what their fans want, they never listen to what their producers want, they never listen to their bandmates, and grow and take the constructive criticism and create something new or better or unique. And even if you fail time to time, it's still better to try and to succeed half the time than it is to not try and just continue to let our rights flounder, or in this case, your songs flounder, and just let them kind of be what they are. Even if this is the best song in the world. Even if it's the best song in the world. If you kept writing and releasing the same exact song over and over and over again, or if you're, Bethesda and you're releasing the game Skyrim over and over and over again, at some point people are gonna get a little bit tired with it, and they want better, they want more, they want different, and that's the way that we have to look at this. So, but the thing is, with nationalism, you don't have a critique of the government, or you don't have a critique of the country in a way that is productive. So my interpretation has been that since the 1980s, we've seen this growing nationalism. And then you see it in response in 2001 when you have George W. Bush win an election that he didn't win. And then you have these people in response where we invaded two different countries that which frankly were mistakes. We know that we've gotten out of the Afghanistan war now, but Iraq especially, we invaded Iraq in response to 9/11, and Saudi Arabia was really the country that was funding the terrorists that attacked us. And Saudi Arabia is a loose ally, at that point was an ally, and we didn't not that I want to invade Saudi Arabia either. Like, this is the minutia and the nuance that we need for this situation. But that has led to that rise, especially in nationalism in the early 2000s, and the overt critique of, quote, liberalism, and not really allowing the leeway to push back on some of the decisions that we've had. And then you have the Obama administration, which, again, is an extension of neoliberalism from the Clinton era, from the Carter era. And, there were some good things under the Obama administration, don't get me wrong, but let's just be honest. The response to the Great Recession, the ACA, like, those could have been better. I think that's not really a crazy thing to say. The ACA should have at least had a public option, because we did actually have a supermajority at the time. And the response to the Great Recession, holy crap, could just be a whole nother dive into on that. But under the Obama administration, we remember in 2010, we had the Tea Party come out of that. And then we have Trump coming out of it in 2015, 2016. And this rise in nationalism, not patriotism, Go to a Trump rally and see, or go to the Trump store. If you're in Bucks County, or if you're wherever you might live, there's probably still one. In Bucks County, we have plenty of them. There's one in right around in the Chalfont, New Britain, almost in Lansdale in the Montgomery County area in Pennsylvania here, and it's all, Trump like Rocky and jacked and having guns shooting them and an American and a bald eagle flying overhead and all that stuff. That's the type of symbolism that has been co-opted by the far right and the nationalists. I love certain American symbols, and I love whether it be the stars and the stripes. Like, I love American for I don't even know symbology. I mean, it's just like, it's not, because it's not inherently propaganda, right? It could be used for that, but I love that stuff, and that's just me being honest. That's how I have always grown up and been a patriot of this country, but it's been co-opted, and you see it if you go to these rallies, and it's sickening sometimes. So, because it's not real patriotism, it's nationalism, and then it goes in here, and we see the dip. People become less proud of the country a bit into 2020, where you hit 63 of extremely and very proud and 42 of extremely proud, which is the lowest it had been at that point. And that probably coincides with the 2020 election. It coincides with COVID. It coincides with Trump and Biden, two old men that kind of don't really seem in touch with the average American. And again, that's also something that, like, it is tangible. I think anybody that knows, either has paid attention, can kind of tell that, like, these guys haven't really been in touch with the regular American people, especially Trump, but even Biden, because Biden's up there, man, and he's been a politician his whole life. He's not had to worry about the same things. And granted, I know his story is rough in places with his kids and his wife, or his former wife, I guess. But it's not the same thing. It is not the same thing to feel the economic changes in this country. And it's good to fight for demographic change, but he wasn't the one leading that, remember. So this stuff leads to this year, where we have the lowest extremely proud and the lowest, well, I guess the extremely and very proud combined is not the lowest ever, but the lowest extremely proud, which I guess doesn't surprise me, but also is a bit manufactured, I think. I think the overall, like, people are getting divided, and people feel like they don't have a voice. And this is a bit manufactured, I'd say, because of the hype up of certain issues from the right, whereas real rights are being stripped away, like Roe being overturned, for example. And it is hard sometimes to say, that we're proud of what's going on, because I'm not proud of what's going on. I'm proud to be an American, but I'm not proud to see the institutions undercutting fundamental rights. So the way that this is going to hopefully turn around, if we want it to turn around, which frankly I do, is you have to provide for the American people. You have to provide tangible, material benefits. And I don't just mean, in this case, monetarily material, but fundamental rights. You have to start fighting for people for their housing, their food. You have to start fighting for their basic civil rights, like the right to an abortion, the right to bodily autonomy, the right to vote. You have I don't know how we don't talk about this enough, but the Voting Rights Act is almost void at this point because of the Supreme Court. They don't want you to have a right to vote. Certain people, you can imply who that is, And they will almost say it out loud that they don't want you to have the right to vote. They say that it's not in the Constitution that you have the right to vote. It's heavily implied by the 14th, I believe, and the 15th Amendment, maybe the 13th Amendment, if I'm mistaken there. All of the Reconstruction amendments, functionally, heavily imply the right to vote. But this is why it's hard, is because it's continuous assault after assault on our rights. But speaking of the continued culture war, I'm going to move over into something that may not seem to make sense if you're not terminally online. And it's more important than you think. Because if we want to fight on the culture war front, right? And look, I'd rather not, but we have to. We have to fight back, and we have to put our best foot forward. So the way that we do it is being able to listen and respond to the, maybe grievances might be the too good of a word for it, but the grievances of the right wing, and be able to properly debunk or properly address, or frankly just come to some agreement on it that we might agree to disagree. But we also have to be on the front lines in fighting against new wave is probably not proper here, but like new media, and how certain people, and that's why I've covered Ben Shapiro in the past, that's why I've covered Tommy Lahren in the past, that's why I've covered Steven Crowder in the past, and today we're going to take a look at Jordan Peterson. And the reason is, even if you might not know who this person is, which you probably do if you're watching my show, but if you don't know who this is, I'll give you the lowdown on him in a second. But these types of folks are gaining a ton of traction on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and whatever alternative things that they do. And we have to be able to nip it in the bud, basically, and just say, he's saying this, that's not true. Or he's saying this, and that's not what the actual implications are. Or just, combating ideas with more ideas. That's the freedom of speech, right? But this guy, Dave Rubin, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, and even putting Joe Rogan in that doesn't feel proper, because he's not explicitly far right, but on certain issues he's extremely far right. So we have to kind of look at it, understand it, especially because everyone that I just named has an extremely male audience. So if we want to win people over that, and funny enough, I guess, look like me, sound like me, and not the stuff I'm saying, because we're not trying to win those people over, because if you already think you think the same as me, we don't have to win you over. But that look and act like me, and in the way that, I'm a big powerlifting guy, and then there's people that are like, want to be manly men, whatever. Those are the people we need to win over. Even if it's not all of them, we need to win a good chunk of them over. So the way that we do it is engaging in the culture war, engaging in a way that is not pulling the rug out necessarily, but it is kind of a splash of water in the face, saying, hey, wake up. You, as a, like, if you're like me, straight, cisgender, white man, have some level of privilege, and you can use that for different reasons. You can use that for different causes. And for me, I try to elevate people's voices, and I try to elevate these issues that matter. And that's why I organize the way that I do. It's why that I fight the fights that I fight, which sounds crazy that I just said fight like 4 times in a row. But these guys, whether you believe that they're genuine or not, that's up to you. I don't believe this is genuine, and I will pause it and discuss throughout. But some of them are genuine, and some of them genuinely believe, in their religious fundamentalism, which you have every right to do in this country. But the second you start implying that it should be applied to everybody else is when we're going to have a problem. And so people like Shapiro that want to have, religious schools, or they don't want to have separation of church and state, and they don't want to have LGBTQ people having rights. They don't want transgender people to exist. They don't want gay people to be able to get married. They don't want gay couples to be able to adopt. They don't, the list goes on and on. They don't want you to have readily accessible birth control. They don't want you to have the right to an abortion. I could just go on and on and on, right? They're caught up with finding the most radical people online, and I don't mean radical as in far left. They pinpoint people that might be maybe, this is not the case with what we're going to be talking about here in this video, but they pinpoint people that might be mentally unstable, but are online. Or people that might not have their ideas fully baked, and they kind of highlight them and be like, hey, look at this person. They said that, men should do this. And it's like, okay, we get it. Like, it's silly. They're locked in. And if you guys weren't online at the time, maybe you're a little bit younger than me, or maybe you're just older and you don't this might be the only YouTube show you watch or the only podcast you listen to. During the 2014 to 2016 era of online politics, there was much more focus on like cringe feminism, and what that means, like, you can, I guess, look that up, but it was like, finding these people that consider themselves feminists, but, are kind of just out there wacky people. And of course, it goes with any group. You can find anybody that is wacky and out there in any group. It just so happens that the people that are popular on the right wing are the people that are a bit out there and wacky, like Jordan Peterson. So they do this because those are the most vulnerable people. They're easier to take down than somebody that is a professor, or somebody that might know what they're talking about, or somebody like me that might organize and do actual politics, rather than what they do is just pontificate. So for that, we're going to look at this where Jordan Peterson has been banned from Twitter. Ooh. And he's been banned for Twitter for using the dead name of Elliot Page, who is the consistently, not just once, but consistently, and trying to undermine this. And funny enough, I talked about Elliot Page transitioning like almost, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago on the old form of this show. And I said it was a good thing because it's good to have people that are, in the spotlight, that are representative of different groups. And I said it at the time, but it's specifically good because Elliot Page is a trans man, and you don't really see that in media as much. You don't really recognize it in books and in movies and shows. It's not really elevated. And I know that sounds kind of silly. That's like a specific highlight. But a lot of people focus solely on trans females versus trans males as well, which both exist. Both are extremely valid. So I think it's important, and I thought it was important at the time, that we had another example of that where we can just point and say, hey, look at this successful person. But bigot Jordan Peterson was, I don't know if he still is, a professor at a university in Canada. He's from Canada. He loves talking about, specifically just about American politics, so we'll engage. But he is a Canadian professor, or I don't know if he still is a professor, I guess, but he does make most of his money online. Now he's getting a show on Daily Wire, so of course he has to amp up the bigotry and the hatred because the Daily Wire is owned by Ben Shapiro. So this is a video that he made in response to being banned from Twitter, and this is him, kind of explaining why he sounds like Kermit the Frog. So if I do an impersonation, it's going to sound like Kermit the Frog, but he basically saying, like, I'm not going to change anything, I'm not going to delete it, and I'm not going to listen to whatever. So this is him kind of trying to explain why he is the victim here.
Hello, everyone. A few days ago, I penned an irritated tweet in response to one of the latest happenings on the increasingly heated culture war front, in response to the decision of an actor named Ellen Elliott Page.
So first off, I'm going to pause it right there. This guy is reading off of a script, right? So this bozo doesn't even want to give it the actual legit try. He doesn't even want, this is the thing with these people. Sometimes you misgender people. I've done it. I'm sure you've probably done it too. If you're watching this show and you know people that are trans or non-binary, it happens. If it's not on purpose, it's okay. It is not supposed to be this big thing like, oh, I got you. If you have an honest attempt at being an ally and saying, oh, you said she instead of they, or which I've done to my friend in the past, and it's an accident, right? And I try my best. It does take time, and especially for someone that's old like this guy, old as dirt, then I'm sorry. Like, I get it. It is hard sometimes to change your language, but when you're reading off of a script, it's intentional. And there's probably people that watch this show that this might be the one issue that they disagree with me on. And I know that I actually do know that there are people that do that. And if that's the case, then you can see it right in this video, what I'm talking about, where people are intentionally bigots, intentionally assholes to people to make them feel not welcome, to make them feel not safe. And now, Elliot Page is famous, so that's probably not the same thing as, like, maybe people that are just your average person walking through town, because they're not the same thing. But the intent is what matters here. So we'll keep listening, because this is only going to be even worse.
I am employing this awkward and impossible naming style because it is now apparently mandatory, and am probably doing it wrong nonetheless, as you're doing it wrong is the whole point of what has been made mandatory.
So again, what he's saying here is that you're doing it wrong is being made mandatory. So what he's pointing out is that he doesn't like it. So he thinks it's impossible. He said the impossible naming structure. He's reading off of a fucking script. I'm sorry for cursing, but he is reading off of a goddamn script and saying that it's impossible. It's impossible. I have a slight inclination that he probably didn't know who Elliot Page was before he transitioned. And if he did, it's not that hard to just say Elliot instead of Ellen. And using someone's dead name is a form of hate speech towards them. It is a form of misgendering. It is a form of bigotry towards them because they are asking you not to. They legally changed their name. So you could easily take it in a million different ways, calling this guy whatever you want over and over and over again, right? And if it's deemed harassment by Twitter, which is what this whole, charade's about, then that will get you banned. So it's so impossible. It's so impossible that he can't even read off of a script. So impossible. It's right in front of him. He's choosing to do it. And that is what is important going throughout this. But let's continue.
But also, I'm trying to make a point. I've essentially been banned from Twitter as a consequence. I say banned, although technically I have been suspended. But the suspension will not be lifted unless I delete the hateful tweet in question, and I would rather die than do that. And hopefully it will not come to that, although who the hell knows in these increasingly strange days. What was it that I said that caused such a fuss? And that fuss is just beginning. And even more importantly and complexly, what exactly was it that I said that resulted in the ban? Here's the tweet in question. Remember when pride was a sin? And Ellen Page just had her breasts removed.
Funny that we are, I'm just going to pause it here because I'm just going to skip ahead after this because this guy's a Nimrod. But remember when pride was a sin? Oh boy. He's talking about in response to Pride Month, which also is a celebration for the LGBTQ plus community that he does not support. And he's saying, remember when pride was a sin, pointing out that in his religion, not everyone's religion, that pride is a sin. But also, revert back to what I was talking about earlier. How many of you are proud to be Americans? Oh, the overwhelming majority of people are proud of the country that they're from. That is just a coincidence of where they were born, but hopefully the choice of living here, which most of us make. So in his mind, pride for your being okay with yourself, loving yourself, is a sin. But I would beg to question if he was proud of himself for being, I guess, a Canadian, then would that also be the same level of a sin? And I highly doubt it. But let's
by a criminal happenings. The response from Twitter, quote, promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of retaliation by clicking delete. You acknowledge that your tweet violated. Submit an appeal to us.
I'm just skipping around.
Please
here.
note that should you do so, your account will remain locked while we review. First, it is clearly the case that I did not promote violence against or threaten anyone with my missive. So that leaves the arguably lesser sin of harass.
This guy has a massive audience, so yes, this is harassment.
Let's assume, since I wasn't informed, that that was the crime. And further, harassment on the basis of so-called gender identity, since Twitter did not do me the favor of actually specifying my crime, and there are many possibilities on that front. We unfortunately have to guess at why this has occurred, and that's actually a big problem in and of itself, and also indicative of the utter carelessness of the Twitter organization with regard to the propriety of its own censorial actions.
So let's just pause right there and just say that he couldn't say Elliot Page, and he forced himself to say Ellen, but he could say that whole thing without stuttering. And we want to act like, oh, this is not some big charade and some act that he's putting on just to play the victim. This is the same people, and look, we don't even have to listen to the rest of this, but these are the same people that try to blame the victim narrative for everything. They say, oh, SJWs are the victims, blah, 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 blah. But he's trying to be the victim. He's trying to be like, oh, they didn't let me go on Twitter because I harassed somebody and they didn't tell me why. It's like, actually, they did tell you exactly why. They told you what you did. You see it in the tweet. You know what you did. You know what you goddamn did, but you're doing it on purpose. He called the doctor that did cosmetic breast surgery a criminal. Now, if you had a breast reduction surgery, is that doctor a criminal? That's the type of logic that this Nimrod is using. These bozos, they hate. And that is what they do. That is their prerogative. They are xenophobic, they are bigoted, and they use people that have less power than them, usually a group of people, specifically right now the target seems to be transgender people, to ostracize people from their communities, from their lives, just to make a quick buck, just to try to say like, oh, the degradation of Western civilization, which he is supposed to be proud of, he's supposed to love, he's supposed to care about, because that's his whole thing. His whole shtick is about Western civilization, fatherhood, manhood. But these people, they don't care about actual the long-term health of men. They don't care about the long-term health of their audience. They don't care about the success of the society that they live in. They just care about making a quick dollar. This guy was promoting a freaking all-meat diet, and you're going to listen to him? This guy was only eating beef. And you want to listen to him? He's not an American, first of all. So he can stay out of American politics if we want to use the same fallacious logic that they want to use. But he can just go and stay in Canada and stay up there. You want to criticize Twitter? Go ahead and criticize Twitter. I don't care. Nobody cares. You want to criticize YouTube and Google and these big tech social media. I got into an argument with a right winger last week about the EPA decision from the Supreme Court that reduces the delegation powers of these different institutions of the government, and he was talking about, oh, you don't want to do anything about big tech censorship and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, break up big tech, break up Facebook, break up Twitter. I don't care. Break up Amazon. But these people don't have that solution. These people don't have a solution. They just want to say, oh, I'm banned from Twitter. Okay, in theory, if your perfect free market solution is to just start a different Twitter, then go do it. Oh, you tried? It failed? Oh, sorry. You tried to make your own YouTube? It tried and it failed because there's monopolies around these things? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. If that's your only solution, then I guess you're shit out of luck. So I'm sorry if you are a fan of Jordan Peterson, you shouldn't be. If you're a fan of Ben Shapiro, you shouldn't be. But if you, if you have an issue with something that these guys said, if you are a fan of them, send the clip in. You can come on the show. We can talk about any of this stuff, and I will discuss it with anybody that wants to about these issues around the culture war that these people promote, because I'm telling you now, and I know people that watch this show that agree with the anti-wokeism that is happening right now, and I'm putting that in quotes, is that you don't know what real progressivism is. And I know that that's fallacious, the true Scotsman fallacy, but that's true. Because it's not saying that real progressivism isn't being implemented or fought for, but it's saying that you're strawmanning the argument. You are using the extreme example of something that is probably not even real to promote an ideology that is reactionary in nature, that undermines fundamental rights, that should make you a patriot, because when you support them, you care about your fellow Americans. But with that is all I have for you today. If you enjoy the show, you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button down below. I know this is a premiered video, so I didn't get to interact with chat, but we're going to be live next week, and then we should have another guest for the following week. And you should send me your questions for State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta post-Senate run. I'll have him on for 30 minutes, so you guys can get any questions that you like, and I will ask him. And hit the bell button down below for notifications for whenever we go live. If you are a fan of the show but you cannot watch on YouTube, or you just want to listen while you're driving, you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for the podcast version of it. And I try to make the audio version just as accessible and easy to listen to as if you were watching me live. You don't get to see my glorious mug, but I'm sure it's probably better at sometimes. And then if you want to, you can follow the show on Facebook and on Instagram, Greater Society Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Con O'Hanlon. And please, if you do enjoy the show, which I hope you do, you know you do, go on over to patreon.com/Greater Society Media. For $5 a month, you can help support everything that we're doing here, paying our editor and upgrading the equipment like this camera and all this that we can do now, live streaming and pre-recorded if I have to, and get much better quality out of it. So patreon.com/Greater Society Media. You can do $5 a month, $10 a month, anything if you would like to support the show. That would be huge. And if you have suggestions for guests, or if you want to come on and argue with me about something, greatersocietymedia@gmail.com. You can reach me there. With all of that being said, I appreciate you guys for sticking with me throughout this episode, and I will see you all next week where we have a big guest. So I can't wait till then, and I hope you guys stay safe. I will be on vacation, but you can definitely find me on social media. So with all that being said, stay safe. I'll see you next week. Peace.